Hi guys, back again to read Polaris. We are on chapter 31, Trial by Science. Emma filed into the captain's cabin with the rest of them. But do you need any help? She asked her sister, but Maria shook her off and limped in with pride intact. Emma sought her eyes. How are you? But Maria kept her gaze down toward the floor. Emma moved on to the next pressing topic. How am I? She felt the pulse thrumming in her veins. She was nervous. She had seen the deathly spores come up close too. She remembered bringing the spear down on that rat thing. She remembered the puff that escaped from within its strange armor. The blood pushed through her veins faster. Were those tiny spores inside her? She had seen them so clearly, been so close. In all that gusting wind, had she breathed them in too? Oh God, she thought, what if it's me? She kept those thoughts to herself and did her best to appear calm. She looked around at the others, but none of them met her eyes. Are they all thinking the same thing? Should we all sit at the table? Asked Thatcher. Henry was already kneeling over the leather trunk. Sit where you like, he said, unlocking it and popping it open the latches, but we will need to do this one at a time. He opened the trunk and began pawing around inside. First he pulled out a book, then a strange metal and glass contraption that looked like nothing Emma had ever seen before. He walked over to the head of the little table and set them down. Then he pulled out a chair for himself and began flipping through the book. From the other corner of the table, Emma raised up on her tiptoes to get a look at the pages. The light streaming in through the black windows, she saw pages of heavy black text, alternating with pages of precise, detailed illustrations. Here it is, said Henry. Chapter 38, Fungal Spores. Sounds fascinating, said Thatcher sarcastically. I assure you, said Henry, flipping the pages of illustrations. It's very compelling. Well, admitted Owen, you certainly have our attention now. Good, said Henry. Then we'll begin. Owen, could you turn the lamp up, please? How high? Said Owen, reaching over for the lamp and swung lightly from the perch above the table. As high as it will go, said Henry, rising once more. Emma eyed the contraption next to the book. It was about a foot tall and looked like a piece of navigation equipment. She noticed that there was a glass lens to look through at the top. What is that device? She asked. It's a microscope, said Henry. What is it for? She asked. Henry considered the question and returned to the trunk with a stack of small objects. It's a bit like Owen's spyglass, he said, but for objects that are exceedingly near. Why would you need a spyglass for objects that are exceedingly near? Asked Owen. Because those objects are exceedingly small, said Henry, handing each of the others a small object. Careful, they are fragile, he said. Glass. And I took hers carefully and looked at it. It was a small rectangle made of thin glass. What are we going to do with these, she asked. Just a bit of spit right in the center, please, said Henry. He wants me to spit on it? Thought Emma. This all seemed strange. For a moment, she thought that she might be too nervous to work up any spit. Her mouth felt like cotton. She managed by thinking of her favorite food, a good duff pudding. The others managed as well, though some with more accuracy than others. All right, said Henry. Who's first? No one volunteered. Emma looked around and saw the others holding their little square of spit, and they were made of gold. Maybe I should just get it over with, she thought, but she couldn't bring herself to speak up. What if it's me? Inhaling deeply, she knew that she certainly didn't smell like perfume, but she had felt a bit clumsier than usually lately. She chalked it up to the soreness and fatigue. But what if? Fine, said Henry. I'll go first. He held up one of the glass rectangles. A slide, he said, then promptly spit on it. Wipe the edge with a bit of a cloth, then place the other slide over the top of the first, sealing the gob in place in a sort of a slide sandwich. Emma watched with equal parts fascination and fear as he slid the slides onto the little platform near the base of the microscope. What are you looking for? She asked. Henry begun to bend down over the scope. But now he looked up, seemingly grateful for the delay. I'm looking for any sign of fungal growth, he said. The spores, of course, or perhaps some sort of fibrous growth. Fibrous growth? The phrase both confused and scared Emma. In her mind, she pictured a poisonous bush. Henry ignored her sour expression and continued. I got the idea from the creatures themselves. The tongues of both were, well, fuzzy. The mouth seemed to be the focal point for the infection, a good, moist breeding ground, as I am sure those white fibers are fungal in nature. I have seen their like before, growing on the sides of fish. Emma considered vomiting. Fortunately, Henry stopped talking and bent down on his microscope. The scope seemed to hold its collective breath as Henry put his eye up to the lens. He was silent for a long second. The seconds grew. Henry adjusted something on the scope. Well, said Owen at last. Henry looked up and blinked a few times. Then he broke into a smile. Well, I'm in definitely need of a good dental cleaning, but I see no signs of the organism. This seemed to startle the others, and suddenly everyone was holding out their slide for inspection. Everyone except Emma. Henry reached out and plucked Owen's slide from his hand, bypassing both Thatcher and Maria, who were closer. Something had changed between Henry and Owen, Emma realized. The two were more or less complete opposites, and they had instantly distrusted each other at the start of the voyage. But now they seemed to share a sort of mutual respect. She would almost venture to call it friendship. Trust, though, it was a short supply. Henry slipped a black glove onto his right hand and handled the saliva-strewn slides. He carefully covered Owen's slide and placed it under the microscope. Once again, Emma held her breath and stared. Suddenly, she felt something probing into her side. She looked over to see Owen holding his pistol by its barrel and poking her with a handle. What on earth? Just take it, he said, just in case it's me. She nodded and took a gun from him, wrapping her hand around the smooth wood of the handle. The fungus wasn't in him. If it was any of them, it was a death sentence. Who would say what desperate acts that might provoke? But could I possibly shoot this boy? She stole another glance. How could she put a lead bullet between such perfect brown eyes? She could only hope she wouldn't have to. Once again, they all turned to Henry, who was already bent to his work. He said, when everyone was parsing the sound of it. What is that, a good or a bad She looked up brightly. You can give him his gun back, Emma. There was a collective exhale. As she gave Owen his gun back, she realized the real reason Henry had chosen Owen first. He would be the enforcer. They had both been cleared. Now Henry would serve as judge, and Owen, at least potentially, as the executioner. Maria was up next. Emma said in a silent prayer, Please, Lord, not her. It wasn't. As Emma crossed herself, Thatcher was already handling over his slide. And if I fail, he asked. Henry took the slide with his gloved hand and said flatly, Then you are already dead. The words went off like a cannon in Emma's mind as Henry pressed his eyes up to the lens. Emma watched with the others, but she already felt alone. She still clutched her side tightly in one hand and the thin glass edges threatening to add blood to the little island of the spit in the center. She looked over at Thatcher. He was standing straight and still, his mouth pressed flat and his eyes shut. If he were standing on the gallows about to be hanged. It occurred to her with a certain horror that Henry could say anything he wanted. No one else would know what to look for, or even how to look. She watched him fiddle with the top of the tube, adjusting some sensitive mechanism or another. The two boys had never gotten along, she thought, and now Thatcher's life was in Henry's black-gloved hand. Henry looked up abruptly and stared at Thatcher. Finding his eyes closed, he called his name. Thatcher? Thatcher flinched visibly, but opened his eyes. What did you see? He whispered. And Emma was almost touched by the amount of faith he seemed to have in the strange device. I'm a bit concerned, Henry began, causing the others to take a step back from Thatcher. It looks like your gums are bleeding, and it could be a sign of scurvy. Thatcher snorted out a laugh and then said, There's plenty of fruit in Cuba. That was cruel, said Maria. Henry hadn't been able to resist a bit of revenge, after all, but he had pretended not to know what she was talking about. Emma, he said. Emma's heart was pounding so hard that it seemed as if it was trying to escape her chest. Her hand shook visibly under the bright light. She extended her slide towards Henry. She was relieved when he took it quickly, but once he did, she didn't know what to do with herself. Would she stand at Thatcher had and brace for the fatal words? A warm hand slipped slowly around her. She looked over at her. It was her sister. The two would end this voyage the way they started it, shoulder to shoulder. Maria gave Emma's hand a quick squeeze, and Emma squeezed it back. Suddenly, Henry looked up. He turned his head towards Emma, and she was the first to see the look in his eyes. It was astonishment or... You are fine, he said, before widening his gaze to make the rest of the crew. We are all fine. No, not astonishment, Emma realized. Relief. Thatcher started laughing, and out of pure joy and gratitude. And the others joined in, acknowledged for the first time just how scared they had truly been. Still one more crewmate to test, said Owen, who has corralled Daffy and now lifted the ship's cat onto the table. The laughter increased. How are we going to get any spit out of her, said Thatcher. Just wait a moment, said Owen, holding her in place. She'll hiss. Instead, Henry rubbed the slide against Daffy's raspy cat tongue and cleared her too. Emma laughed along with the others and gave Daffy a nice scratch behind the ears. There was still danger on board the Polaris, she knew, but the danger was lurking somewhere outside the cabin. It was a danger from without, and not from within. That was the kind of danger they could fight. And looking around the strange community they had built, the strange group that had fractured and somehow formed again, she knew they would do that fighting together. All right, and we will find out tomorrow how the end of the book goes. Have a good day, everybody.